that.
Hello guys, and welcome back to another installment of Galley Stories, Stories of the Bering Sea and Beyond. I am your host, Mark Haler. And again, we're continuing on with Bart Eaton. We've had his son, Jeff, join us here today. Jeff, how are you?
I'm doing great.
Excellent. So, Bart, at this point, when last we spoke, which to our viewers or listeners might be a week ago, but to us it's been about 5 minutes of break time. You had just gotten back from, you're in Kodiak, you lost to Miss Alaska, and let's continue the adventure from there.
Well, I'm all dry now anyway, and I was kind of wandering around. And Oscar Dyson had the Peggy Joe. I went to work for Oscar, shrimping. We had some good shrimping. At 4 cents a pound, we made money. But a lot of stories on Oscar. I don't know where to stop with Oscar. That's almost a chapter with Oscar and Lloyd too. But the Oscar stories, I don't know where to. But I went back to working on deck. Not so much I couldn't run a boat, but I probably lost a little confidence and all that other stuff. And I hadn't drowned anybody yet. So I went to work, and Oscar had a shrimp boat, and we had a crab season. Did real good on the crab season. But then one day we're sitting around the house around Christmas, I think it was, because the bait net was all froze up under the tree. And he and Nellie, his partner, got to thinking, and we're all excited about the potential. Potential's my favorite word. You know, that get me going every time. It's cost me a lot of money too. but so he's go out there, and we broke this net loose. It was an old bait net. Put it on the Peggy Joe and got some deckhands. Ron Jolan was there, Danny Olson, some of the other guys, and we went out to Chillicothe just to make a pollock drag. We went out there and tore up the net, and we didn't even know how to mend a net.
Was anybody fishing pollock at this time?
No, there was nothing. We were just trying to. There was a Japanese cannery in there, a Japanese owned, called B&B, Bix Bonnie, I think. And so we went out and went fishing, got cod and got pollock and got everything, and put them in these wooden boxes, and took them to each cannery and just put them on their front door. You know, we were all righteous. You know, hey, why don't you buy them from us? Japanese cannery in here, and they got the boats right offshore. You know, it was kind of a we did that, and I think that is the first load. I never heard it. Things hadn't even got going in Dutch Harbor yet, you know. But I'm not saying it's the first commercial load, because we didn't get paid. I mean, the crew. Oscar kicked in the fuel. So anyway, there was a big article in the Kodiak Mirror, you know, all this stuff. And so that just kept going. And then the next year, I went to work on deck for Lloyd Cannon. And then the next year, Joe Kurtz came over from Soldovia. He already had the Amatuli. Wanted to know if I'd run it. And it's the exact same boat as the Shellfish was. And I really like this boat. And so I started running that boat, going to the Bering Sea, fishing back and forth, and all around. Yeah. It was a long time ago, you know, we didn't have a closed season, hardly. You had a hard time finding time to go to the boatyard. So you weren't, and the crew would fish year round. Never took our pots out of the water.
Crab we're doing?
Yeah, and if you wanted to take a break, you just hired somebody off the beach to cover for you for 2-3 weeks. You go to Hawaii, come back, go fishing again. You know, it was fish, all you wanted, which worked out good. And then I was on the Shellfish, and the skipper wanted to go Dungeness fishing, because some of my buddies, Ted Painter and his brother and their dad was old feller, but they were Dungeness fishermen from Oregon, you know. And so we were going to get a piece of that, and we got a couple hundred pots. And right here at Pacific, fishermen rigged them all up and took them up there. And we're working on the boat, and we had a crane. So we stacked 3 or 4 pots and then hooked the crane up and stack them. Well, we had a friend, I think he's passed, I don't know. a Dungeness fisherman from Oregon called Junior Cross that come down and told the skipper, "Wow, we don't use a crane. We just throw them up on a stack." Well, my skipper heard that, and he wouldn't turn the crane on. And I only had one other guy with me, Coogan Fox, and he's about a foot shorter than I am. So we'd sling these pots up, and he'd release about a foot from the apex, and I had to take it the rest of the way up. I just didn't think that was, not because I'd been to college. I just think it was smart when you had a hydraulic
sitting right there.
Well, I thought that was a little bit Norwegian thinking. But in any case, God, we went from there to I don't know how far out we went. Clear to Dutch and back, and we didn't hardly catch enough to eat. But so we come back in, and he sold the pots to this guy in town, all rigged. But I'll tell you about that skipper, George Johnson. He paid Coogan and I so much for every pot that we rigged. He paid us. Otherwise, I think we made $400 in 4 months, But anyway, it worked out. So when we had a crab season in Kodiak that year, he says, "Look, if you two guys can handle the deck, we'll only take 2 guys and split the other guy's man share between you 2 guys." Well, that sounded good to us. We always thought we could do anything anyway. Yeah, hell, I could do it by myself, if you ask me. And so we fished Kodiak that year, and we had 40 pots on the Portlock banks, 40 pots at Cape Douglas, and 40 pots down at the towers down at Sid Kalidi. So we'd pull 40 pots, go over to Cape Douglas, give those, then go down, come back, and so that gave everything about a 3-day soak. And I think when we started that, I can't really recall, the price was maybe 25 cents a pound. And the price went up to about 50 cents a pound. Well, that's in the
double
same
the money.
year.
Yeah.
So the 2 of us on deck had a hell of a season. What really made us, because we were trying to find another guy to fish on deck with the Dungeness, but nobody wanted to do that because they'd already, heard. So the skipper went, and he was getting pissed off too. He said, "Screw him." They all wanted to go fish king crab because he had a real good reputation. He was a great guy. That was probably one of the biggest years I ever had because Coogan and I split up 3 men.
Sure.
Yeah. So that was a big highlight. But then he sold his boat to Northgate, which later became the All Alaska boat. It was the San Diego tuna company, but they were out of the Columbia River there. And he sold it to him, and he said contingent on I could run the boat. Well, I'd never been to Adak, but I'd caught some crab, around Kodiak. So I took it out to Adak. I tell you, there were stories there. See, I wouldn't go into Finger Bay at night. That's where the processors were, because it's so narrow on this old Calvin Hughes 48-mile radar. I said, boat can't get in there. So I anchored up outside until the sun came up so I could see. Well, you could get in there, but it's kind of like going through the locks. Until you've done it, you don't really know. Yeah, and so I really felt stupid. But anyway, I had a good year, but I got out there and my reduction gear went out. Capital gear, 514. But anyway, or 20, it one of them. It went out. God damn. And I'm an ADAC. This is 50 years ago.
That's the furthest you can get.
But I got there early. I'm never late. In fact, I think some guys at Trident used to call me dilly-dally, because I don't dilly-dally. I'm always saying, don't dilly-dally. And so I'm laying out there at the dock, and here comes a cruise boat by me. And he looks up, and he says, "Hey, where's the halibut around here?" Well, hell, I didn't know. I said, "Oh, they're in the water." I knew that. And I said, "Well, probably over here," like I knew what I was talking about. He said, "What do you use?" "Herring." "We're going to get some herring." Well, I had a whole boatload of herring in my freezer, and I give him a case. Best case of herring I ever give away. So he goes out fishing, comes back with a couple of fish. "How do you clean these fuckers?" He had some big 100-pounder laying in there bleeding, so we cleaned it and had a few beers. Turned out, he said, "Well, what are you guys laying here for?" I said, "Well, I'm here early, but I got to get up." And they didn't have a phone out there at the dock. You had to go into town. You couldn't go into town If it said keep off the grass, he stayed off the grass. ADAC, you know.
Military.
Well, this guy turns out to be the civilian head of utilities. He was the head of the shop. Everything. Well, hell, he says, hop in. So we hopped in. And at least I hopped in. I got in there to the phone. He took me by the PX, and I got lettuce and tomatoes. And he just treated me great for that box of herring. Well, what do you need? I said, well, I know what I need. I need a new capital gear. And I says, I got one lined up. Joe Kurtz, that knew the guys at Caterpillar. I can't remember the guy's name. But he and the guy at Caterpillar at night went down to Caterpillar, and they had an engine on the floor with a 514 on it. And they worked together, took it off, put it on a truck, took it to the airport, put it on a Northwest flight to Anchorage, okay? And then the United States Navy flew it out to ADAC. I think that's past. I don't know if there's any receipts. I swapped out that gear in 24 hours. Of course, we already had it out. You know, there's nothing to pull the whole gear off. Mm-hmm. Well, I wouldn't say nothing, because my engineer was doing it. I was just hollering, got to get this thing going.
So drinking coffee, eating those candy bars.
Anyway, that was the best case of herring. And of course, this guy fell in love with me. He caught herring, he caught boats, he caught, and he was a nice guy. It turned in a little different for him after that, because he started a crab cannery out there. He got off the rails some way. I don't know that story, but there's probably somebody around here who knows the story. But somebody comes up next to your boat and wants some herring, be sure and give them some. That's the book of Bart, chapter 2, verse 7. Always hand out your herring, because you never know. But these are bumper stickers I give to my grandkids as you grow up. You know, just hand out a little herring.
Everything's going to work out all right.
It's going to work out. But anyway, and so I went out fishing there, but there was more crab found me than I ever found them. No two ways about it. I go out to Corvin Bay, and that's where the All-Alaskan, it's not the All-Alaskan then, it's the Northgate, brought a load of our gear out. So when I took the gear off, I put 10 pots more than I was rated for, and I really liked. When you're tied in shallow, you can stack pots clear to the lights. But
it feels fine. It feels
fine. But of course, most people, I've always included myself, if you're having a nice sunny day like this, you kind of plan like it's going to be a nice sunny day the rest of your life. Well, that ain't going to happen. But anyway, we went in and got those pots, and this is another pat on the back to one of the best friends. Well, not friend, we don't do Christmas together, but Magny Ness. He was out there on a boat, and he come in where I'm tied up. He said, what are you tying here? I said, I'm broken. So he comes up, he says, you ever been through this at Capass? No, I didn't have a chart. So he goes down and he gets his chart, and he draws a duplicate of his chart. And it really saves you a lot of time going through that ADAC path. But it's on the tide, it's not one of those things you just cruise through. And we BS'd. And here again, it's kind of like I've always said, when you're younger, you meet a guy like that, or some of these other guys, it was, for a young guy, it was kind of like meeting Willie Mays,
That's how it was with Magny?
Yeah. Oh, well, that guy could catch crap. He
isn't he still running around here in Bellevue?
Oh, I'm sure he is.
Yeah.
Well, he was Corey Ness's younger brother.
No, I know who he is. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So anyway, we just hit it off good. I mean, we hit it off, and so I got that. I never forgot that. But 2 years later, I'm out in ADAC. I'm proud of this too. He calls up and he had a full load of crab, but on a lot of people will know what I'm talking about. But on his generator set, there's what you call an exciter. How they work, what they do, I don't know, but it doesn't work without it. But I had that happen on mine, so anytime I had a part breakdown, I always said sand 2, and I put them up. That was my technical education. Get 2 of anything that breaks. So I had
that first one broke.
Well, he had a full load of crab, and it's blowing pretty good, and he didn't want to go to Dutch because his boat would roll around and kill a crab, and it's just a disaster situation. And I said, Magny, where are you? And he told me. I said, I don't know what your problem is because I'm troubleshooting this over the, I think I had something like this, but I didn't know for sure. So he had to kind of stay there and jog in the lump, and maybe 6 hours. I didn't care. I jogged over to him, and like we all did, you pass a part, you put it in a plastic bag and wrap it up, tie a buoy on it, you get up close, and you throw it in the water, and they grab it up. So I threw it over to him. I said, I don't know if this is it. He knew as much about electronics as I did. That's why I liked those old Kelvin Hughes, because they had tubes in them. And when the tube went bad, it quit glowing. Well, hell, I can figure that. And you swap tubes. Now they got these damn boards, and then they cover them with 3 layers of plastic, and you just don't know. But I threw it over there, and I'm waiting. Pretty soon his lights popped on. Away he went with a full load of crab. That made me feel good. But I've always had I never forget that kind of stuff. There's some good things happen. I've often thought about this. When you get older, you're going to find out. You kind of reflect on things, I guess you call it. Before, I was so busy getting to the next problem, I solved that one, I'm going to the next one. And that one's out of my mind. Mm-hmm. But when you get a little older, you kind of reflect. It's amazing, some of the stuff that'll happen to a guy, and then you get to thinking about it. And here's where you got to stop the tape, because I forgot what the hell I was going to talk about. Well, anyway. But another good story about that is Chuck Wells one time. I had the adventure in Kodiak, and he had the 7 Seas. I got a good Chuck Wells, remember this one. I had a spot off of Chirikoff where you could get a full 8x8 pot full of crab. Females and small ones, and maybe get 10 big ones. But boy, I tell you, getting those 10 big ones out of that pot. It's easiest just to dump them on the deck and stack the pots. Lift the pots over, stack them, and pull out the crabs. But 10 was all I was getting. That was... And at least when I was stacking them, the crew was thinking I'm moving. I didn't know where to go. I'd been looking everywhere. So we'd get a half a deck load and make it easy, half a deck load. But I said, okay, get something to eat, sleep for a couple hours, and I just kind of jog around, go back, set them right back.
Didn't know where they were at.
I didn't know where they're at. Well, I had to get some crab out of this thing. But I always had a few out prospecting around while I'm doing this. I had to get some crab. So I loaded up a deck load once, and I'm headed north up to Portlock, and I'm going by, and it's dark. And you got your lights going, buzz, buzz, buzz. And I heard somebody say, "Set 'em, Bart." I heard that. I don't know if it was one of the crewmen stuck their head up or what the hell was going on. I keep cruising. He says, "Set 'em, Bart." So I thought, what the hell? So I cruise over. I see this blip, and I go over there, and there's the 7 Seas laying there. Back when there weren't a lot of boats around, we used to shut down and just lay out there, leave your lights on and everything. So there's the 7 Seas, but I could tell the way he was talking, he wasn't wanting me to talk. He was
just telling you to set them.
He just said, "Set them." So I ran some strings. I saw them. I ran them, see which way they are, so I didn't tangle up with him. And I set those pots. And if I hadn't set them, I'd have gone another 200 miles up to the Portlock banks. Don't you know? Got a couple trips right out of there. Set them, Bart. I'll never forget that.
So that was over the radio.
Yeah.
So at some point in here, you're moving on to where you first met Chuck. Because you guys'
I had met Chuck in Kodiak because he was coming to town to look at the shellfish. Because his first boat was built over here at Pacific Fishermen. The Tejan? No.
Was it the Tugiak?
Yeah. Tikiti.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. And first time he was coming down the dock, he had an overcoat on. You didn't see a lot of those and boy, it was flapping in the wind.
The old Western ones, the kind of...
It's just like you see these politicians in the halls of Congress. They're always in a hurry going somewhere. They ain't going nowhere. But they want the film to catch them. Like the wind's going through their hair and their hat's falling off, and they're going to the next fight. Well, that's the way Chuck was normal. This coat was flying, and he wanted to redesign the boat and everything, and he did. That's where I first met him. He doesn't remember that. But anyway, I remember that. So that's just... And then I was out there with the Amatuli. I did pretty good. I think that's what got him.
I think you might have the record in the Bering Sea with that boat.
No, I don't know. But I did. In ADAC, he was out there. We had 1 year out there, and he had to catch a processor. Well, there ain't nobody going to catch more. It's unfair to me to tell a story about Chuck, because Chuck can't come in and call me a liar. But that's the time when you can really write a non-fiction book, because there's nobody there can say it's full of shit.
He can send you an email, and it'll be lit.
But anyway, I did pretty good. Well, he didn't like that. So I said, shit, I'll just hire that guy. But anyway, I was tendering herring. I was actually fishing for icicle, tendering herring. Icicle was they were great people too. But we were always, one story leads to another story. But then that was the fishing part, and then I started going to work. The deal was I could fish 6 months a year and work for Chuck for 6 months a year, running as tenders.
Wait, I don't know how you guys actually met and
we just
how
met.
This started.
Well, then I was delivering herring to Chuck. When I delivered, I'd go up in the wheelhouse of the Bountiful, and we'd talk.
Oh, okay.
And the best one I ever did, I said, Chuck, he says, I need a tender. That's when he first started doing salmon, herring. I said, well, of course I was tendering for icicle. And I was pretty much full-blooded fisherman. What you going to pay? I like to get right to the meat of the bone. He said, well, I don't, Chuck. He said, I never had a tender contract. He said, why don't you write one? So I wrote one up. He's debating about it, but I knew what I was getting paid. I just wanted another $100 a day. Tenders back in those days were one of the low guys. The phone rings, and I'm in Chuck's office. And he had a young fella, my age or older, named Bart Campbell, that worked for him. I'm standing in the office, and Fran takes his call, and I just been over here at Icicle talking to Scott Jacobson. He was my tender guy. I hadn't locked anything down yet. I was doing
You're negotiating.
I was doing the dancing around. And they were good. No, there's no problem. So, goddamn, Fran says, is Bart here? I said, yeah. I'm standing right there at the front desk. So she's got 10 things going, phone's ringing. So I grab the phone. Yeah, Bart here. He says, this is Mike Jacobson. I think that was his name. That was the old man's name. How's it going, Bart? I said, it's going fine. I was just talking to him 5 minutes ago. And he said, what the hell are you doing? What do you mean? He said, well, Bart was over here. Amatuli Bart. He thought I was Bart Campbell. And he's unloading to Bart Campbell, but it's me. I said, oh, yeah? Yeah, he's over here telling me you're offering it's going to do this and going to do that. What the hell you doing? They're trying to fix the price on me. Well, I said, that goddamn Amatuli's a hell of a boat. To be sincere, I already was going to make up my mind, but I never make it, Just like your old girlfriend, it's yes, but not right away. You know what I mean. So anyway, oh God, he's since passed on, but I never did go over and tell him, yeah, that's a pretty good deal. You really like it. And then I hollered down the aisle. You could look right down the door and say, hey, I just got a better offer from Icicle, Chuck. Well, I really didn't. Anyway.
Were you guys over at the old yard here at that point? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's one of those stories that happened.
Well, in the industry, you guys are kind of like Starsky and Hutch.
Well, I
Like
don't
a
know
team.
what we are.
Yeah.
we've had some hollering matches, but we did them behind closed door. And then we'd come out crying and saying, "Oh, it's my fault." No, it's my fault. And you know how it goes with guys.
So take us on a couple of those adventures.
Oh, Christ.
I hear a good one about when you guys had to go up and it was drugs on a boat or something.
Oh, I don't even want to tell that one. That was the first time we started checking for marijuana tests. You know, that was a big deal on boats. That was before the Coast Guard was even. We wanted to check on that drug thing. So we had heard there was somebody on one of our boats. There were some drugs on the boat parked in Akitan. So there's a policeman down here, I don't remember his name, and I think one of the crab fisherman families put together a company that was going to go into enforcement on drugs. Kenny Peterson, I think. But anyway, we hired them to go up to Kodiak, or go up to Bering Sea with us, the Dutch. So Mike Ryan and I don't know who else went, with these cops on their off time. But this one cop, if I can't think of his name, but they were the real deal, you know. We're sitting in the hotel room up there. We get off the plane and we walk up, and they're up at night greasing their pistols and greasing their guns. We're gonna do this and we're gonna do that, because we didn't know what we were doing. I didn't know what I was doing. Mike Ryan damn sure didn't know what he's doing. And so you should have him telling that story too. So the next morning we go over to the Sea Alaska to board it. And as we're going aboard, and cops are great, but they never been on a boat. They didn't know bow from stern, you know, or they get lost in some void up here somewhere. They were calling, "Where are you?" "I don't know where you are." Well, these guys, and we did have an engineer that was passing out drugs. Boy, he damn sure knew where he was going. You know, so he made about 6 laps around the boat. Of course, all the portholes open and toilets were flushing, and oh, it was something. In fact, these cops, we went down to have dinner the first night, and they had to go back to their room because about half the guys in the room or in the restaurant they knew. "Oh, I arrested him. Remember, we arrested that guy over there." It was funnier now because we wanted to sneak in, and we had a retired Coast Guard guy, and we didn't tell him. Well, he went ballistic because that's his boat. There ain't nobody, you know. They were all plain clothes. You know, it was lucky we didn't get shot, or somebody didn't get shot. And Mike's going up the Jacob's Ladder. He never goes anywhere without his briefcase, and it opened up. Everything fell in the water. So we all, cops, everybody's down there picking up all these papers. Well, everybody knows what's going on by then. But anyway.
Getting boarded, yeah.
Anyway, that was, for us, that was a great story.
Well, you know, great stories you tell to your son, right?
Well,
so Jeff probably has.
Well, he's heard it because I've always told him, if you've heard this story before, just pick your nose or something. But if you heard it before and it's good enough to tell again, well, scratch your chin. So I have to see if he's going to scratch his chin.
I want to ask Jeff, growing up with this guy,
Oh, God.
you've got to have a couple really good stories that he's told you that he's not giving us today.
Well, when you say it, there's a couple good stories. It took me about 10 minutes to come up with this whole list that I'm.
By the way, he's got the 8 pages here. No, he's got a
truly,
pretty big bullet.
and obviously the stories that we hear, the stories he's told are all truly incredible. And one of the things that makes me the happiest, and it happened a few times yesterday at this ALS fundraiser, is when I'm introduced or I meet someone and they find out that I'm Bart Eaton's son, they go, "Oh, I got a great Bart story. Oh, I love your dad." And then they go into the story. But specifically, there's so many stories, and I've been fortunate over the last 20 years since I've worked at Trident, and when my dad was there, nearly every day we go to lunch, and now that I have 3 sons, oldest is 16. When he's in town on Saturdays, we go to breakfast. with myself, my dad, and my sons whenever possible. So I've heard so many stories. And again, we're only right now up to the very early days of Trident. But there are truly there's full aspects of your background that have not even been covered up to this point. You didn't talk about being on the Fishing Council. You didn't talk about Magnuson-Stevens Act, how you were part of that, and the Law of the Sea Conference, and working with Senator Stevens and Warren Magnuson. So maybe just a little bit, maybe if you could just tell one or two of the stories about your early days and ending up as a crab fisherman and being in Washington, D.C.
Crab fishing, and like I said, I was righteous. I'd been in the Peace Corps. I tried to change the goddamn world. North Pacific was no problem. Shit. But anyway, so I went back to Washington one time. I can't really remember the issue. It was something. It wasn't 200-mile limit bill. And I got to know Don Young. Don Young had graduated from the same college I was from, and he was a great guy. And he told me, he says, this 200-mile limit thing, there's more conversation about it. It wasn't Alaska. It was the East Coast and the Gulf of Mexico, and South America did the 200-mile limit first. And he told me there's nobody from the state of Alaska back here, when you're doing whatever it was. So I come home, and I wanted to go see Governor Hammond. I was going to call him, hey, Governor. But we had a legislator there named Naughton, Ed Naughton. I called him. He said, no problem, come on down. So I flew down. He got a meeting in with Governor Hammond, and we started talking. And I said, if Don Young's saying this 200-mile limit bill's coming, I said, my humble opinion, and Don Young's, we should have a management biologist back here, somebody from the Department of Law. It sounds naive now after you see how everything goes. And so this thing's coming. And I wasn't back there too long, and I figured out the biggest lobbyist for any legislation is the National Marine Fisheries. They're there. They're there all the time, and they know what's going on. And so, by God, he said it's always money. We get some money out of the Law of the Sea Conference, which we had some money from. That was the international, where they were going to have the Law of the Sea. And I didn't think much of that. I'd been on the Law of the Sea. Oxymoron of all times is your industry advisor. That is funnier than hell. But I could see if we didn't have some back there, at least chawing on them a little bit, they're going to sell your ass right down the river, because it's more important with the treaties with Russia and Japan, and give them a few thousand tons out of the Bering Sea is the swap back and forth. So I come back, and by God, old J. Hammond threw in some money. So we had a group, and then they sent a biologist back, Ed Heiser, and there was somebody out of the Department of Law to go through this. So I got into it, thinking I was going to save the world, and go back about every 3 weeks as they're drafting this stuff up. This stuff didn't just happen overnight. And the big lobbyists back there were the tuna fishermen from California, because they didn't want 200-mile limit bills, because they were the ones that were causing all the trouble around the world with their highly migratory species. But anyway, just one thing led to another, and developed a real good relationship with. Because back 50 years ago, you wanted to go see Senator Stevens, you go see him. You go up to Anchorage, you see him. I think there's maybe 200,000 boaters in the whole state. So, especially if you carried a king salmon or a king crab with you, that's how you. They
opened the door.
I know. So anyway, we spent a lot of. I and the association guy Tom Casey, we were pretty tight running mates in those days, and we'd go, and it's just day by day, and every day they could change. I think that thing's about 1.5 inches thick. Well, they'll change 3 words over here. They'll change "you may" to "you shall." Okay. Well, that's a different. meaning. So, but they don't tell you what they said. You got to read it every day and see.
All 3 inches of the document.
Oh yeah, well, I finally got to where I just said, let's weigh this thing every day, and if it goes up, they added something. If it goes down, they took something out. Because, it's unbelievable. Well, wasn't it Nancy Pelosi said you got to pass it to read it?
She's the one that said it.
Senator Stevens had a law guy, ahead of his law thing, actually became quite a big-time lawyer. We're back there always using their copy machine. You got to copy shit. And he come in and he had about 15 people working at desk, interns, and he said, God damn you guys keep coming in here using our coffee machine. You got to start paying rent. And that was pretty quick. I said, well, that's funny. I thought we were paying the rent, being a wise ass. Boy, everybody ducked their heads, and he knew he had said the wrong goddamn thing, paying rent. But in any case, yeah, Senator Stevens and Don Young treated us. In fact, I've always thought that maybe there should have been a Stevens, Magnuson, Don Young act, because Don Young, he was in there all the time. But so that was, and so Senator Stevens in those days, his wife,
you know what?
They invited me over, Tom and I and another fisherman over for dinner to his house. So we go over there. We're in there having dinner, and Warren Magnuson and his wife are there. And Warren was from here. He was chief of the budget finance. He was the big honcho. So Ted Stevens introduced me, Bart Eaton, to Warren Magnuson as Alaska's 3rd senator. Well, how different is it now? Stevens was a more smart guy. He knew hook his wagon to a star. And when you think about it, it makes sense, because politically Alaska and Washington could be one state, because everything starts here and goes there. But anyway, I'm over speaking my stature. But oh yeah, so we're down there. We had dinner, and Stevens, I'm not saying anything everybody doesn't know. Warren liked to have a little toddy now and then. And what you do back in Washington, what they all do, everybody, just like anywhere else, the women go to the galley, not the galley, but their kitchen and clean up, and the men go downstairs to play pool. Come on down. So we come on down. But that's the kind of guy he was, Senator Stevens. And so we're down there shooting pool, talking. And you know how I don't know if it happened to you, but I couldn't shoot pool, but when you're shooting pool and the other guy's shooting pool, you're on the other side of the table, you kind of look at his stick and see how he's lining up and kind of watching. And he's there and Warren's there. Of course, he had a staff lawyer there that he gets it lined up, and the guy'd hit the stick on the end for him. He'd pass gas, and all these lawyers would jump up and say, "Excuse me." and so I'm sitting there, I'm trying to help old Warren line this thing up, and he looks right down his stick, and he looks me right in the eye. He says, "Young feller," he says, "I want you in my office at 8 o'clock in the morning." Okay. He says, I'm going to get a hold of Strom, and we're going to take care of this B-52 bullshit. That was I thought of course, Stevens is standing there going, no. But that's a true story. I got witnesses that saw that happen. So, Fisheries is taking me to some strange places.
Well, there's got to be some fun ones. I mean,
oh yeah.
Normally, when you stop by my office, you give me the good, funny stories. Let's talk about the time that you did a rescue.
That's the one where we're flying in the helicopter with 9-4 Danger. That was his call sign, 9-4 Danger. And he was a helicopter pilot. He'd get in, he'd put on a helmet. Well, that kind of, I don't know, what the hell are you wearing a helmet for? You got no faith in yourself? But he was an old Vietnam, great pilot, great guy. I think his son flies up there now, but I don't know. But anyway, we're flying around there, and some tender calls up the Wallstad and says, Wallstad, we see a net floating outside the line. It's supposed to be, can we pull it? Because they don't want somebody going over it and getting their wheel. Walstead said, yeah, sure. So I'm listening to this, kind of strange. And the guy calls, he calls back, Walstead, there's a human in it, human body. Well, then, really listen. And we're kind of flying right over that area. So we just kind of hovered in there, seeing where this story's going. Didn't know. And Walstead said, oh, Christ, well, come over here. So they go over there. Well, then they call him and say she's still alive. It was a she. Everybody was just concentrated on that. But when the net was floating out of the river, you knew there's more to the story. But you had to wait around to find out what it was. So we raised up in the air quite a bit, and I looked down at this place called Dead Man's Sands. And there's a boat, the tide's going out and the wind's going in, and I could see a speck. A boat was sitting down there. So I told the pilot, 2 and 2 or 3 and 3, there's something. Let's go check out what that is. So we fly down there, and here's this big fiberglass Russian, they call them Russian boats. Certain style, brand new, nice boat. With the engine still going, nosing up into Dead Man's Sands, where the wind was blowing off his stern, blowing waves up over the back.
He's into the beach.
Yeah. What the hell is going on? So we hovered around, and we could see there's nobody back there, nobody doing anything. And the roller on the back of the boat is going. And these are brand new boats, so there's no smoke coming out of the exhaust. And the rope that they have from the reel back to the net went over the roller, and I could tell from the air, I looked at it had broken off there. How, I didn't really know. Either it was there and it burnt off or something. So I tell this crazy pilot, I said, if you could get...
With his helmet on.
Well, yeah, I forgive him for that. But I said, if you could get down close enough, I could maybe jump in there and see what's going on. I misspoke, because this is an old Vietnam guy. He can do anything. But with all those antennas up there and the rudder going, you got to get, and the wind's off the stern, which is a no-no for helicopter. You got to be flying into it, and you got to stay away from those antennas. And of course, he comes back and says, I can do that, I can do that, I can do that. Well, I got him going then. I was right up his alley. Well, I'd kind of talked myself into it. They always say, at least the Greeks have a saying, most people dig their grave with their mouth. Well, that's just about what I did, because I was throwing dirt. Well, I couldn't back down, because it's kind of a manhood thing. And he's hollering, I can do it, I can do it. So, I opened the door, and we're getting down, and I had to take my earphones off, but we had to fly into the wind to open the door against the wind, because he's got to be into the, you can't fly ass backwards in the wind. And I had to take off my earphones. I couldn't talk to him, so I'm pointing down. I'm straddled on the struts, and I'm going down, down, down. He's going, no, no, no. And I said, down, down, down. And the closer we got, the smaller it looked. So I finally just slid off that thing, because I knew if I missed and hit that roller, I was going. But anyway, I overcame that and just slid off and landed in the boat and rolled over and get my full. By then, Chuck came down with another helicopter with his bankers in it. And he's standing out there with the VHF I couldn't hear anything, so I run in to the wheelhouse of the boat. I don't see nobody. Engine's going. So I run into the engine room. Nobody. So I went into the way forepeaks, a bunk, and I see a couple of heads. Well, a big fear for me always was up in Bristol Bay, especially with gas boats. This was not a gas boat, but it's carbon monoxide. All our boats, we had carbon monoxide warning things on them. And so I didn't know what the hell had gone on. It's easy to say it after you've been through it. So I go up there and I grab these guys out of their bunk. They hadn't been asleep I found out later, for 2 or 3 days. And so the skipper had told them, and his wife, you go up, take a nap, and we'll run the boat. Well, they run the boat. The skipper's wife went overboard, obviously. The skipper went overboard also. Theory, not knowing what happened, but you can kind of surmise. And these guys were up asleep, not knowing what happened. So here's this gorilla standing there looking at him, grabbing him by the feet, and I wasn't real polite. I just wanted to get him out that back door onto the deck because I didn't know. I just didn't know. I thought my actual brains were carbon monoxide. And that happens on a regular basis up there. With these stoves and all that stuff. Yeah, you got to be pretty careful. Well, they wake up and they're Russians. Young guys, they can't speak English, and I damn sure can't speak Russian. They were kind of looking at me, and I'm looking at them, just like we'd met in the alley out in back of the smoke shop, kind of wondering, who is this guy? And I'm trying to explain to them. All they were looking for is a skipper and the skipper's wife, and they aren't there. And I can't explain. Well, I didn't know why they weren't there, but here I am. They fish in a fleet up there, the Russian guys, and he had his VHF all tuned up, so I just hammered and says, this is, I forget the name of the boat, just calling for anybody on this freak. And here come a Russian guy, and he said, hey, I got this Russian boat down here, and the 2 crew members are okay, but I'm thinking it might have something to do with this lost net, with a woman. It just kind of was starting to make a picture without knowing everything, but seeing the rope. And so it didn't take them long to all drop their nets and drop everything and reel them up and head down there. But in the meantime, this guy had about 20,000 pounds of fish in his boat. I said, well, hell, what am I going to do now? So the tide's starting to come in.
You're going to go take that fish somewhere, aren't you?
Oh, yeah. So the tide's coming in, and so I'm kind of going over this mud flat because everybody's coming from east. I'm kind of going west. And I got over that sandbar, and I took up off the other side. And I thought I could drop it off at the icicle barge, but I really didn't want to do that. But I'll do whatever the cops want. So I asked one of the guys in the Trident office, I got this boat, and I'm running it.
What are the crew members doing?
They're still, I put them on the radio. So I tried to explain, but I couldn't explain. But I said, we're going into town, and Matt, I think, or somebody in the office called the cops. And the cop says, we want that boat to come into Naknek. Okay. I didn't say, I could stop here, try icicle. So I go all the way up there, and I follow some boats in the channel, go in and tie to the sea line. Matt was there, and I get about halfway in there, and he said, Matt, start your hydraulics. We got to protect this fish. So I pull in there, no shit, man. We had guys we hooked onto every bag. It's about, you can check the Rosemary. No, we had about 20,000 pounds of fish off that boat so damn quick. Well, and the cops were there because the cops wanted to be the first ones to talk to these crew. Because they're just like, they didn't have a clue. They didn't, But with the gal and the guy missing, and it started making sense to them probably a lot quicker than it did to me. But so the cops come and they interviewed for 2-3 hours, and Chuck knows the rest of the story. The other Russian guys came and got the boat. They kind of went off, but Chuck met some of those guys in Hawaii that year, and he's got more of the story of what they thought happened. But
where was the captain?
He was overboard too, and the theory being he had gone overboard trying to get his wife back or something. I don't know. And one of these nets goes flying out, and you got rain gear on, and you got buttons and snaps, and who knows what happened, because the boat was still in gear. So he was towing on his net.
Was he found?
Huh?
Was he found?
About a week later, they usually pop up. Yeah, he was found.
They usually pop up?
Yeah. Well, they do.
Is it bobber or... How do you...
No Russians or people in general?
Humans in...
Okay.
Well, I didn't lose another guy, but we had a guy up there on the... What's the name of that boat? 90% Angel. That was a hell of a boat. That was a hell of a deal. But anyway, so it was just one of those things that... But I went around after that was over, and if you ever looked at one of those boats, and I recommend to everybody I know or see or figures they'll take criticism from Bart without taking it too offensive, that boat was fiberglass. The wheel was inside. There was no step on the back. I was just imagining this guy trying to get up on that boat. scratching up the side of that fiberglass boat. And I'm a firm believer, and this is years ago, I talked to 2 or 3 of our guys. I went down there and said, look, these aluminum boats, it's easy to just cut a hole out and put a handheld on there. So if you're overboard, you can kind of pull yourself up out of the water, especially if there's nobody. But even if you're overboard and there's a guy on the boat, it helps a lot if you can give yourself a little, because when you're overboard and you're full of water in your boots and your Levi's, you ain't light.
Okay, we're going to stop it right there, guys. We'll call this one episode 2 from Captain Bart Eaton. Look forward to next week for episode 3 with Bart Eaton. Buy wild Alaska seafood, and if you can't buy wild Alaska seafood, at least buy wild seafood. Follow us on Galley Stories on Facebook. Like, share, and subscribe, and we will see you next week.